Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. Happy Halloween, everyone. Today is also a pretty special day specifically for Bitcoin. How many of you know why today is important for Bitcoin? Show of hands, maybe? Absolutely. Got it in one. Thank you very much. So today was the day, back in 2008, that Satoshi launched the Bitcoin white paper. This is a big deal because we're all here today as a result of that. And we've heard from many people. We've heard from advisors to central banks. We've heard from builders. We've heard from institutions. The reason the conversation is happening today, and we're all here, is again because of what happened in 2008. And that was the launch of the Bitcoin white paper. It's fundamentally changed our reality. And Bitcoin is a absolute amazement. You know, at the start of this conference, we heard how one individual can change the world. Satoshi has definitely done that. If, indeed, it was one individual, the jury is out on that. So today, Bitcoin is worth $2.3 trillion as an asset. One Bitcoin is worth $106,000 or 92,000 euros. Now, that changes very rapidly, as I'm sure you all know. Bitcoin is increasingly being integrated into our financial system by those who previously rejected it or were very hostile towards it. JP Morgan only last week announced the acceptance of Bitcoin to be used directly as collateral. Now, this really does show just how far Bitcoin has came. And of course, as far as the Bitcoin ETFs are concerned, it's the fastest growing Bitcoin or ETF, period, obviously launched by BlackRock. And ETFs today hold 1.3 million Bitcoin. There's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. Today, in regards to the circulation supply, that's about 6%. So I'm absolutely delighted to be talking about the rise of Bitcoin finance. I think everything that I've sort of said there really demonstrates its increased use in the financial world. I think a good place for us to start is with, of course, introducing the panel. We've got Taco from Manifest Network, and we've got Robert from Native Bitcoin Yield. A good question to ask is all of this a good thing, the financialization of Bitcoin? Robert?
Yes, I mean, the thing that we need to realize that so far we didn't succeed actually using Bitcoin in DeFi. We are far from there, even though, Bitcoin has the biggest, the largest adoption in terms of, the mind share, people owning it. Yes, if you go to a street, everyone knows about Bitcoin. Yes, so the recognition, yes, goes beyond anything else. And obviously, we have seen, yes, a lot of adoption in, I would say, the centralized finance. On the DeFi side, we don't see that much. There is, I mean, depending on, the calculations, roughly recently I was seeing a very good report. Only 1.1% of Bitcoin is used in DeFi.
Wow.
That's nothing. 1.1% is really nothing, right? And if you want to take it into the picture as like, what's Bitcoin? Why people owning Bitcoin? Yes, some people and Bitcoin maxis or or miners, some miners, yes, they believe in the vision, and actually those people, they represent the majority, right, of the vision of this world where there is no a single entity controlling the asset, the supply, and the whole vision of Bitcoin being that store of value and an alternative asset that is actually digital and protected by cryptography. And obviously, we have the very hungry Wall Street that is tapping on it and using it for their own speculation, portfolio management, and trying to use it in the capital markets. It's still like not being used in that way. But then we have this huge gap, yes, because we have the Web3 world where the Bitcoin actually is minted, which is the house of Bitcoin, yes, the Bitcoin chain. And then we have the centralized world, which actually operates the Bitcoin, right? And then what's in between? Yes, how we can use Bitcoin in a Web3 native way. This is what we are trying to solve. And that's a huge opportunity, but there is still a lot of homework to do.
Fantastic. And I love the stat you gave there. 1% of Bitcoin today is used in Bitcoin DeFi, or DeFi broadly. That's compared to the 6% of Bitcoin circulating today that ETFs currently have. So the kind of on-chain,
It's actually also worth to put it into the the numbers. Yeah? So that 1% represents 200 million, $20 billion.
Okay.
Correct? $20 billion. So it's actually, in dollar terms, it's a huge number, right?
Absolutely.
More than few times, order of magnitude more than the whole Atom market cap.
Okay, yeah. So it really helps to put that into perspective. It's not a small amount of money, but in comparison, if we're dealing with percentages, yeah, that really does help. And Taco, do you think this is all a good thing, the kind of institutional embrace, the financialization of Bitcoin by institutions?
So one of the biggest things that the misconception is that as soon as banks announce that they're participating, like that's their first day buying, that's when they finally publicly announce that they have. JP Morgan is a great example where they've been providing both education and use cases, data points for their traders, for everything along the lines. But there was a point when JP Morgan was building 7 different chains at once.
Correct.
Because they didn't know how regulations were going to go under the last US administration. So they were trying to figure out how to make a product that could fit into anything. So it's not that these banks and institutions are just now getting into it. Now they're just publicly doing it. So when people see that these large banks are getting into it and publicly announcing it, and they're like, well, why isn't my bag moving? Why isn't price, going sky high? It's because they're already involved, and have been for years. So these people aren't dumb, they hedge against anything and everything. So we've seen a big push now, though, with different financial instruments, which can be a little bit worrisome in some regards, as we've seen before financial instruments that are amazing get mixed in with toxic debt. And unfortunately, that's sort of where we're coming back to that, where this entire ecosystem that we're part of, that we're building, or that, inspired us in some way, is now sort of being taken back in a way by financial institutions, because they're figuring out a way how they can use it to control the numbers again. And so they can make other things look good by taking what, we've made great. And so, and that's from everyone in every ecosystem, not just Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin as a DeFi product, we've seen shift. There is no native DeFi on Bitcoin. That's not what it's made for.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it's shifted from being a peer-to-peer financial system that, was really expanded upon, like, by Silk Road. Okay. Let's just say it. That's what made Bitcoin. I have a younger brother who still has like 6 Bitcoin locked on a phone that he bought for Silk Road, that he's like, I don't know how to ever get back into this, but I know it's here, and I'm going to just keep it. And I'm like, I love you so much.
Yeah.
But we've seen a huge shift in this. And so as Wrap BTC and now other protocols, big institutions making their own versions of Wrap Bitcoin, we have ZBTC on Solana, we have XBTC from OKX, we have other protocols that are making other variations of Wrap Bitcoin. We've seen how permissionless liquidity pools pushed forward by like Shapeshift for people to be able to not only have, use their Bitcoin to enter into DeFi and EVM networks and other chains, and how we've seen ThorChain really sort of push some really cool technology pieces. Not many people are spending sats these days.
Yep.
They collect them, or they try to, and so they figure out different ways to do that with DeFi.
And you mentioned the good with the bad. Why do you think we're seeing this explosion in regards to Bitcoin finance? To throw that back at you, is it because Bitcoin is just simply a better asset? Why do you think we're seeing this kind of real embrace of Bitcoin in the financial world?
It's the only thing that so far is so big that people don't think it will take a lot for it to fail, that some regulatory clarity could be made around it. And so because it was shored up so much on first principles, that the idea that no one person, no centralized authority could actually control it, that it would give stability to something. And so the idea of that Bitcoin moves, one sat is supposed to always equal one sat. We've seen a lot of things change in that. And right now we're seeing a lot between Bitcoin Core Chain and, the amazing people over at Ocean Pool, trying to strip away like inscriptions. This is the thing though, every new generation wants to make the new thing that they're using different, fit them. Rather than, and that's one of the scary things to me is like, there's that whole ship building process. If you change every board on a ship, is it still the same ship that launched? Will Bitcoin still have the same protections if it gets changed too much?
And I do definitely want to come onto that. We're going to talk today, obviously, is the day of the release of the white paper. There was a vision of a peer-to-peer currency, and we're going to get to whether that vision is still being followed or whether it's maybe drifted off. Before we do that, Robert, I want to come over to you. How are you enabling Bitcoin finance with what you're doing over at Native Bitcoin Yield Hub?
Yeah, absolutely. So one reason that we didn't see the explosion is referring to your previous question. We didn't see explosion of Bitcoin in a DeFi was the problem of an access.
Yes.
You can easily buy Bitcoin on an exchange, right? And you withdraw it to your own private wallet. But doing it in a DeFi world, it's not that easy. So, like from historical reason, if you see by the way, how those things evolved, Cosmos and the Internet of blockchains, yes, was all around this, IBC, secure, control, secure, Web3-native interoperability. Yes, Ethereum built their own world with, a blockchain where you can mint your own new assets. And then recently, yes, we see a lot of explosion in the stable coins, right? Because this is what everyone understands, right? When you go and check your wallet, you rather probably want to see like in the dollar terms rather than, I don't know, like ETH terms or Atom terms, right? Like 99% of the people will basically, you can have also, like, you can see it in Bitcoin terms, right? But 99.9% of the people use dollar terms for that, right? So we are thinking in that way. And Bitcoin is this, like a kind of a storage of a value. And so those are the three reasons, right? Like we didn't have a good access to Bitcoin, how we can use it in a Web3 native way in a DeFi. And the ecosystem, yes, that was adopting the local coins, right? Like Ethereum, the ETH, and everything that was happening on Ethereum, Solana Sol, meme coins, and blah blah blah, right? So the degen narrative is a little bit different than the Bitcoin narrative. Yes, we need to understand that. However, what's important, the opportunity is huge because, as you had said, right, the growth, the mindshare is there. But actually, I want to say that, you were referring to this, centralized finance, that, this is a threat. I see it actually as an opportunity.
Okay.
Because this grows the adoption, this grows the possibilities. It also opens more how we can leverage that opportunity, that recognition in a DeFi. Yes, there was, Dean and Philip from Hydro, they were presenting us how actually, those DeFi protocols can compete with centralized protocols. We can offer better solution, more liquid solution with better yield. I don't need to go through many different processes to set on some yield portfolio and then wait to offloading. I can do it with various protocols in seconds or minutes, right? And again, have a better yield. So now we are getting there, and this is what we as Native want to solve: provide the Web3 native access to Bitcoin. So far, yes, the solutions that are out there, they are going, falling back to the Web2 world. Yes, so you have your Bitcoin on the Bitcoin, and then how you can use it on, the execution chain. Yes, like, Cosmos app chain, Ethereum, or Solana. The only ways today that you can do it are through some federated setups. So federated means that you have some federation that is controlling the permissions. It's an authority, basically. Or multisig. Yeah, so this is what OKX is doing, Coinbase is doing, BitGo is doing, and so on. In both cases, this is not Web3 native, right? There is some permission setup, additional trust assumption, and the control. And again, the reason that we couldn't go over that limitation was the limitation of Bitcoin. Yeah, so we took a step back and thought, okay, how we can solve it. We were working with the cryptographers from Wasserman Institute. That's one of the most famous institute in cryptography and science in the world. It's in Israel.
Well,
And those professors, they invented like an extension of an MPC protocol, yes, to PCMPC, which is basically the first MPC protocol that is trustless. It means that, like in a traditional setup, when you use MPC, again, you give a control to some signers. That is, we can then like discuss it as a separate subject. Yes, is it better than multisig or it's not better than multisig? Here is like the user is also in charge. I don't have to give up, my full the custody of the Bitcoin to someone else. So that's a kind of a breakthrough. Yes, like the protocol is many times reviewed and actually now submitted to the Eurocrypt and AsiaCrypt. That's like the two biggest cryptography mathematical conferences in the world. Patent pending, and we are about to launch by the end of the year. Yes, and we are doing it through SUI.
Okay.
So basically, there's like a whole protocol with the MPC setup and around the SUI, and then through Axelar and IBC, going to multi-chain. Yeah, so we are talking here with Agorig, with Hydro, yes, how they can easily access with the liquidity providers, with miners, custodians. We are talking with many miners that are happy to provide anything between $1 million to 100 million, yes, to generate a yield. Because everyone you go and you see Arthur Heisten speaking, oh yeah, Bitcoin to 1 million. Yes, by the end of the year. We are already almost by the end of the year.
So you don't think that's going to happen, no?
No, I'm not saying that. We need to be more pragmatic,
yes.
right? Bitcoin, I believe Bitcoin will grow, right? But Bitcoin cannot. If you want to go, what's the next step? The next step of Bitcoin is that we really embrace it as Satoshi envisioned, right? It has to be used. Yes, people have to use it. Our DeFi ecosystem have to use it. Bitcoin capital is much bigger than the dollar capital.
And when you say people have to use it, and talking about Satoshi, do you think used in the manner that Satoshi envisioned it? When Satoshi laid his peer-to-peer currency network out, do you think Bitcoin is still being used, or do you think it's drifted away from that path?
It's not being used from the beginning almost, right? If some guy was paying, how much he was paying, like thousands of Bitcoin for a pizza, I don't call it using.
Okay.
Well, I disagree with you. I feel the intrinsic value of Bitcoin wasn't really propagated at that time.
No, it wasn't.
We weren't putting dollars to it like you were saying.
I agree.
And so I think he said, in his case, 10,000 Bitcoin was definitely worth 2 pizzas.
At the time.
That was
at the time.
That was a fun. That was not a proper use.
The intrinsic value of it, but I agree with you that it's not being used the way
exactly. That's the point. And my point is here also like a bigger one. Look at the portfolio, like savings, right? Mm-hmm. Even you have $, obviously you have some dollars that is in your running account, but then you try to invest it. You want to do something with it. Once you go beyond some threshold, right? Whatever is for you, yes, maybe 10,000, 100,000, 500,000, yes, you try to be smarter what you can do with it. Same with Bitcoin, right? If you believe that, let's say, Bitcoin will double in 4 years, if you see the previous cycle, yes, the Bitcoin didn't double even, right? The top was, 70,000? Now the top was, over 120,000. Mm-hmm. So even if you assume that it will go to 200,000 in maybe next 3 years, 4 years, if you apply 10% yield, then that 200% will go to 300%. Okay. That's a lot. Yes, so let's say if you have 1 million, so instead of going from 1 million to 2 million, you go from 1 million to 3 million just by having a good 10% yield strategy.
Okay, so the sort of vision of a peer-to-peer currency for Bitcoin, you don't think, has ever really taken place?
That's the point, right? Because we are now building it. Yes, we are missing. There was this chasm, the gap, that we couldn't fill it. Yes, because every ecosystem, and here even you can see, yes, if you were following what Hydro was proposing, what in the Cosmos ecosystem we are proposing, yes, having atom-backed, every ecosystem focuses on its own, let's say, economical value. Which makes sense, yes? If you are Ethereum Foundation, yes, they want to have Ethereum price going up. Same for, Interchain Foundation, Atom, right, Solana, and so on. Yes, they want to keep growing their assets. Yes, that okay, this is a settlement layer, the execution layer. We create new assets, right?
Yep.
But then we still didn't embrace the biggest capital in Web3. We are trying now to embrace. The concept. Magnus was proposing, yes, for Cosmos, okay, let's make Cosmos this, the chain for stable coins. How the ecosystem will benefit from it? Because if there are two banks, using it to settle between themselves, the ecosystem doesn't benefit from it. If you see what I mean,
yes.
right? It's just two banks, or it's again kind of like a smaller ecosystem. But if we embrace Bitcoin, which is open for everyone, gives a lot of opportunities.
Yes, more
and
feedback.
Again, today the on-chain stable value of the stable coins, if I'm not mistaken, it's about 300 something billions.
Something like that. Yep.
Yeah, and today the on-chain Bitcoin value, yes, is 2.3 trillion.
Yep.
So it's much bigger, right?
So we should leverage that. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not saying that we should give up the stables. It's important use case. Yes, we need to grow the adoption. Yes, so that's what I wanted to tell you, that I see this, that centralized finance, that adopting those things. For me, it's opportunity. But the bigger opportunity for Web3, for us, for the ecosystem, is embracing what we already have and grow that.
And leveraging that in the same way that institutions are.
Absolutely.
And bringing that on-chain, bringing that natively, and embracing all those properties that Bitcoin brought to us. Taco, how are you seeing people leverage Bitcoin today financially? We're talking about the rise. We've spoken about how institutions are leveraging it. We're talking about how, wrapped Bitcoin, layer 2s. How are you seeing Bitcoin be embraced in a kind of DeFi native manner, an on-chain manner?
So we're starting to see and like the historical movement of Bitcoin to being digital gold. We see that a lot, but what does that mean? In one aspect, gold used to be the currency we traded, and then that became too big and burdensome to transfer, so people would store that in banks and be issued notes, and then they would trade those. And so we're starting to see on Bitcoin native, there is no DeFi opportunities. So we saw both wrapped Bitcoin come out, and now we're seeing a lot of layer 2s within the Bitcoin ecosystem. Everything from Bob, Botanics, BitLayer, and I think 7 other L2s building on what they see as this most secure native layer. And so there's a lot of ideas right now that are sort of floating on the agentic AI side of things.
Okay.
Where can they find the most, like everyone wants fast payment, We thought, at first Bitcoin would solve the problem of instantaneous payments for N+ transfers across borders and permissionless, but for some reason 10 minutes became too slow for people that were done dealing with 2 weeks. And so now we have millisecond block time and execution pieces. And so on the DeFi side, where it's really getting used, unfortunately, is on the borrow-lend sector. So we're rehypothecating debt. And so that's sort of one of the broken financial instruments that we're now bringing on chain. But what we wish I would see more is the utilization of Bitcoin wrapped protocols, or utilization as pairing to tokens. So as new projects launch their token, right now they've sort of gone away from pairing to the native token, which I think really is a crappy move, just to be honest. Like, when you launch a new project and you launch it on Cosmos and you go pair it to USDC, that's a dick move in my opinion, instead of pairing it to Atom.
But a convenient move, right?
Not really.
No.
Because one, you're sort of removing the entire ecosystem that you're built on.
Yeah,
and even if you're not built on Cosmos.
You are giving up what the ecosystem was built for.
Exactly. Yeah. And so now, because if you look at it, you pair your token to USDC and no trades happen on your token for a year, and I launch Taco token and I pair it to Atom, in a year's time, hopefully, there's a little bit of a movement on the valuation of my token versus yours, just paired to stables. But you're really hedging and betting on inflation, because your token will now be worth less just because of inflation.
Yeah, I think there's a stability element in regards to why they're used, but what you're also saying is that can work both for and against, really. You could leverage that. Quickly, last thought of 30 seconds from each of you. What do you think some catalysts that you're looking at that are going to really ignite on-chain sort of finance for Bitcoin are going to be? Maybe we'll start with you, quick, sort of 20 seconds.
Yeah, so embracing that opportunity, because opportunity is huge, and if we, instead of like trying to go in the same circles that 95% of the projects are being dead, focus on the big capital, how we can embrace it. I think that's a huge opportunity. I mean, obviously, I would like to see it with Bitcoin. And yes, if you builders are, trying to, I mean, look at it. If you create a good yield protocol for Bitcoin, there is $2.2 trillion that's available.
Yep,
Right?
yep.
And those guys, we are talking with many miners, with many actually smart capital, that they will be happy with 5%. I can give you, millions in TVL if you provide a good yield. Talk to me.
Okay, and Taco, very quickly, what do you think the catalyst is going to be? Further inflation, further fiat devaluation? Yes?
We'll see more use on the agent side of things, especially with X402. That's base layer native stuff happening, and I know we're wrapping it up, and I want to thank everyone for being here today. Huge shout out to the entire Cosmos ecosystem.
Absolutely, and shout out to the panelists. Yep.
And so there's just so much opportunity. So I'm going to side note here for a second. There's so much opportunity within the entire Cosmos ecosystem that Bitcoin can just be a foundational footnote, that there is something backing something in it as a proof of work. Fantastic. And that's what we really sort of see where new things are coming out of, because old ideas spark new ideas, and as new chains happen within the Cosmos ecosystem, it will spark an idea in someone else. And so just huge hat off to all the freaking builders.
Brilliant. It's a bright future. Thank you very much, guys. A round of applause for our panelists. And thanks, everyone, for showing up. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Good to conclude on builders.
Thank you.